What's the worst note a director has ever given you?
Tense up, you know, do it like you did it in another movie. Then I feel like telling them, you know what, why don't you get another job? You know what I mean? It's just like, you can't ask me to do something I did before. That's like cheating on somebody. You know what I mean? It's like, no, come up with your own idea.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
Hey guys, today on Happy, Sad, Confused, one of the greats, a first-time guest on the podcast, the one and only John Turturro. He can do it all: comedy, drama, theater, film, TV, talking Severance and his entire career with me. Hey guys, thanks as always for checking out my little old podcast, Happy, Sad, Confused. It took a while to get him. I don't know how it took this long, but here he is. Today's main event is John Turturro. Great opportunity to chat with him at 92nd Street Y, a live event, keying off of his recent Emmy-nominated performance in Severance Season 2. He was nominated for the first season. This is a great chat. More on that in a second. First up, as always, want to remind you guys, if you haven't yet checked out our Patreon, please do, because that's where we put all of this stuff early before anybody else can see it. Access to live events, merch, autographed posters, all sorts of cool stuff depending on the tier level you want to try out. It helps us make more stuff here. So go to patreon.com/happysadconfused. Give it a shot. Why not? We've been making podcasts for over 11 years now. So, every little bit helps make more of the fun stuff over here. Okay, speaking of fun stuff, this is such a fun event we had. Oh my God, this was a New York event at the 92nd Street Y. As I said, first time he's ever done the podcast. John Turturro, I mean, this guy has done everything. I say it in his introduction, but I'll just say it here quickly. When I started to love film in the 80s and the 90s, I mean, this guy was everywhere. He's still everywhere. But really then was when he was discovered and championed and had this amazing symbiotic relationship with Spike Lee, starting to do the right thing and just being in all these films. The Coen brothers, Barton Fink, Miller's Crossing, The Big Lebowski, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He was their muse. And since then, continues to kill it, whether it's in TV, stuff like The Night Of, his character roles, like in things like Adam Sandler films or Michael Bay films. And then out of nowhere can, again, shock us with an amazing leading man performance, a romantic lead. He really is one of those guys that can do it all. He's also happens to be an authentic born and bred New Yorker. So much like character and soul to him. You'll hear it in this conversation. Really great stuff about his upbringing, his parents, who sounds like were amazing characters. I feel like this one gets better and better as it builds. Because a lot of these folks that you hear on the podcast or see on the podcast, as you guys know, I've done a lot over the years. John, I haven't really. So, you have to build that trust. And I think we did. We got there. And by the end, I was just loving every anecdote and story. So there's something in here for everybody, all aspects of his career. It's a really cool one. As I said, he was kind of also spreading the good word of Severance, well-deserved Emmy nomination for season 2. He's in contention. This guy should have a ton of awards by now for my money. So whatever, it is what it is. So yes, without any further ado, let me take you to a live event at the 92nd Street Y. Here is me and the one and only John Turturro.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 92nd Street Y. I'm Josh Horowitz. I host a podcast called Happy, Sad, Confused, and you are inside of it right now. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Thank you. I'm so excited. I have a first-time guest on the pod. I don't know how I've been doing this podcast for over 10 years and never had this actor who is so formative for me and so many other cinephiles. John Turturro is about to walk on stage, and this man has been doing the work continually at the highest possible level for so many years. When I was coming of age as a cinephile, particularly in the 90s, when I was first kind of becoming obsessed with film, he was first, making his bones, becoming the go-to guy for the Coen brothers and Spike Lee. And in film after film, in project after project, he always delivers. He's a chameleon. He is now being recognized again with another Emmy nomination for this fantastic performance in the most obsessed about show on television, Severance. We're going to talk about all of it tonight. Are you guys ready? All right. By the way, we also like our New Yorkers around here, so give it up for a New Yorker, a great actor, a great guy, Mr. John Turturro, everybody. Here he is.
This is a new space, right?
This is a newer space. Welcome. Thanks for doing this, John.
Well, my pleasure.
I was watching a bunch of interviews. I saw Riz Ahmed, your co-star in The Night Of, say not only does he do a very good John Turturro impression,
Oh, really?
but he also says that John Turturro likes a lot of cooking metaphors when he talks about acting.
Cooking metaphors.
Should I
Okay.
expect a lot tonight? Is that something?
It's possible.
Okay. Drinking game every time a cooking metaphor
Yeah.
comes up tonight.
Riz is, yeah. He's a formidable guy, yes.
He's a hell of an actor, isn't he? As are you, sir. Congratulations on Severance, all the acclaim. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like to be John Turturro walking the streets of New York, though, because I would imagine you could have one person wanting to talk about fan theories from Severance and another person quoting The Big Lebowski. Like, what is a day in the life in New York for John Turturro?
Well, I think most people are pretty polite, actually. They don't really, sometimes people greet you and warmly. They don't always ask for a selfie and things like that. But it depends what you've been doing recently. Yeah, obviously Severance has a lot of people who are obsessed with the show and Irving and and Bert and stuff, and so it's different times things happen. When I did The Night Of, there was a lot of people, would be talking to me about my eczema and things like that, and which I don't have, fortunately. The Coen brothers, that's a whole other thing, and I mean, I think that's the only the LEBOWSKI things is that there are people who are really, it's like a religion.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of people who have tattoos of me on their bodies as the Jesus.
Should I show mine right now, or should I wait till the end?
But and sometimes in very intimate places. And I have to say, that really is kind of horrifying to me, to think like the inside of your thigh.
That's a commitment.
But the Jesus, he's a religious figure, so
He lives on. He's going to outlive all of us.
he lives on. Who the hell would ever imagine that would have occurred? But I did when that movie came out. It was not very successful here, but I started getting very strange mail from men and women and prisoners and things. And it was very risque, a lot of the mail that I got, of things that they wanted me to do to them. And I would be like, what the hell why am I getting this, mail? And, but, thank goodness it didn't turn into anything worse than that. So,
touched a nerve. They say if you can affect one person, even a prisoner, it's a good thing.
Well, sometimes you can have a small but very dedicated audience. But this audience has become a different thing. But Severance has, I think, because the show poses questions and doesn't give answers, that people fill in the space and they have their own theory about what's going on. And the other day, Ben and I did something for an NPR show, and someone wrote in, and they were in the intelligence field, and they said, this is exactly what my life is like, because I have to do this work in a place that I can't share it with the other departments. And when I go home, I have to kind of delete everything. I cannot talk about my work at all. She said, it is not science fiction. This is exactly how it is. And both Ben and I were sort of like, wow, so.
The metaphor becomes real for some
it's
people.
Real. It's real for certain. I know people, I have a friend whose father was in the CIA.
Right.
And, you can't share anything with your family.
Well, I would think also, to apply it to an actor, I don't know if you're the type of actor that kind of deletes the hard drive when you go home, or
Well,
you
you have
take it
to
home with you.
You have to sort of decompress or whatever. And as you get older, you realize that's not a good thing, to come home and
Yeah.
it's still there. If you've done your work correctly, you've expunged it. It's come out. It's in the work, and then you don't want to bring it home.
So, talking about this show in particular, and then we'll circle back to your remarkable career. I mean, this is such a singular phenomenon. This is a very specific show, a very odd show, and yet it has resonated, as you said, with such a vast audience. I mean, do you have a good read on what's going to click with an audience or not at this point in your career? Are you surprised by the success of this?
I knew my agent, Christina Bezdikas, read it, and she thought it was really an interesting script. And I knew it was original, and that's what drew Ben to it. And by then, they had been working on it for years. So I read the first, 3 episodes. And I thought it was unlike anything I had ever read before. It had certain kinds of ramifications of the films that I had seen, before. But it was its own thing. And I think we've had the time and the resources, and Ben really has pushed the whole show. He's really been fastidious in his approach and also exploratory. We've done scenes, many different ways. And the first year we were there, the set was it's so oppressive. I mean, people have come on to visit the set, and you see after 2 hours, they're like, gotta go, you know what I mean? And it's like, gotta get out of here, you know what I mean? And we were doing that during COVID. And so the crew had not only masks, they had shields. And we would rehearse sometimes with masks, and then, but there were lots of people we never saw their faces for 6 months. And it was really strange at first with the COVID situation and that set too. So I didn't know if it would, but I thought what was going on was really interesting.
It also, I mean, look, it's a bit of a leap of faith when you jump into something like this. When you
It always is.
Well, it always is, but
It always is.
But a film, you at least see the beginning, middle, and end. You know the entire arc of your character. Here, it's open-ended when you start.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Erickson was kind enough, even before I said yes, to write sort of a backstory to the character, why he was severed, and that allowed me to do a lot of research so I could have, fill in, who this person was, and when he would go to work, what would be left of that, and what would be left of that. Because everyone switches somewhat, but maybe not to that extreme. And beyond that, everything is pretty grounded, but you're in a reduced state, but you still have your, I think, physicality, you still have your vocabulary. You're not completely in second or third grade. You know what I mean? But you are reduced a little bit to maybe your essence. And I had been a substitute school teacher for 1 year before I went to Yale Drama School, and I did juniors at Rice High School, and then I did 5th and 6th graders. And it reminded me of being with 5th and 6th graders, especially that was girls and boys. And there was something about the show that reminded me of that dynamic.
I'm curious, what do your scripts look like? I mean, Chris Walken, your buddy, famously removes all punctuation. Do you?
I have a lot of notes in my script.
Yeah?
I highlight everything. I highlight all my cues. I underline all my operative words. I have a journal where I kind of keep all the history of the character. Sometimes I have music. I warm up. I warmed up a lot for Irving, my voice, and I wanted to be really disciplined and regimented because that was part of his background. And I had really strong ideas. I wanted the mustache, and Ben was like, well, I'm not sure about it. And but the makeup lady, supported me. No, I do physical things because all of us have a center in life, whether it's your forehead or your chest or your pelvis, and it's because of the psychological baggage that you've carried over so many years. And I think when you find the character's center or whatever, it can help you look at the world. And I've worked that way on stage. And one of my early teachers really encouraged me to use my body. I like using my body.
And it's still a starting point, it sounds like, for any character. You think
Yeah,
about that
because when you
physicality.
do something physically, it does trigger other things.
Right.
And even if you work on something vocally, I mean, when I first did it, Ben was really nervous, and I said, well, let me listen to it, and then I can always adjust the sound a little bit. But I wasn't about to toss it. I was like, this is the choice I make. And Stella Adler says, there's a famous quote that she said, your talent lies in your choice. And sometimes you can make a choice and it can be disastrous, because it's not a choice that allows variety.
Right.
So as long as you make a choice and you can do a lot of things with it.
Well, that's all an actor has is their choices, I would expect, right?
Yeah,
because
but
if you give nothing, you're making a decision.
Yeah, well, some people don't make maybe there are some actors who are more chameleon-like. There are some actors who you believe in any role, but they don't maybe transform.
Right, a
as
naturalism,
much.
like a Gene Hackman type who's just is that person.
Yeah, but Gene Hackman is one of the
amazing.
great actors, moment to moment. So you have to be moment to moment within that. But I basically like doing things where you can disappear a little bit and also reappear.
Right.
And that gives me, I don't want to just look at myself. I'm bored with that,
You've lived with that guy for a while.
Yeah, it's enough of that guy, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
This audience in New York saw before we started this great clip from, I think it was episode 4.
Right.
I would imagine that's a highlight of the season for you. You get, not only do you escape the fluorescent lights of women.
Yes, I loved being outside, and it was a long shoot. We were, upstate, and it was, we were in the mountains, and it was invigorating, to do that. And we were on the lake and everything, and Lake Minnewaska, and it was after kind of a vulnerable time in my life, and it was nice to be in nature.
If you'll indulge me, we're going to go down memory lane because there's a lot. We could spend 5 hours. We only have about an hour, 45 minutes or an hour, so we're going to hit some major moments in your life. But first of all, just growing up. Grew up, born in Brooklyn, kind of raised in Queens. Do I have that right?
I was raised in Hollis, and then Rosedale. Yeah.
There you go. So
I grew up like the exact opposite, of Spike, because we're born 3 weeks apart, and he grew up in an Italian neighborhood. I grew up in a black neighborhood.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
so when we met, we were like, well, where you been? So
Where you been all my life?
yeah. So yeah.
So, looking back at your childhood, I mean, was your family surprised at your trajectory? I mean, were you a performer, a big personality? Was there that in the family, or what?
Well, I had a pretty expressive family. My uncles, my mother's brothers are musicians. My mother was a singer. My father's family, they're really full of, big personalities. I mean, and my father had the capacity, sort of like Lee J. Cobb, George C. Scott type of actor. He was a builder, but he had a very big voice and a big
bruiser.
and he had
course,
a vulnerability to him. And both my parents loved movies, so I used to watch movies with them. Mostly movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Right.
And then I would go to the movies sometimes in the 60s. But we used to watch $1 Million Movie, which was like the first VCR, because it was the same movie 5 nights a week. The Honeymooners, which has influenced so many people in this business, I thought was a very sort of was like my mother and father. We used to call the show Mommy and Daddy. Actually, and it's a very truthful show. I loved I Love Lucy too, but the Honeymooners was a big influence to so many people, and so I never thought. I never knew anyone in the movies.
Right.
It wasn't until I started going to see theater that I thought, wow, I can almost touch that, and that really sort of opened me up in a different way.
So when did your parents kind of exhale and say he's going to be okay? Do you remember that?
Well, my
point?
father always wanted me to be, like a architect or doctor, lawyer. I mean, that's, he came from Italy, and, that's what he wanted me to be. But, once they saw me do plays when I was in undergrad school in SUNY New Paltz, and, my father he'd be tired because he got up so early, so he'd always yawn, in the middle of the play.
Oh, great.
You hear this guy, oh, I knew it was my father, you know what I mean? And he'd talk sometimes in the audience. But they were pretty, honest when I did something, that they thought was good, and they responded to it. But, wasn't, then I went to Yale Drama School. So they saw me do many, many, many plays. I had been acting such, a long time and before I actually, made a movie or two or whatever. And when I did To Live and Die in LA, for example, that's one of the first roles I actually had, like a real part. I took my father to the screening, and in the movie, I took all my friends. It was all guys because it was a guy kind of movie. And my father was smoking, and watching, and I was running through the airport and really fast, and Bill Peterson was running after me, and my father just like yelled right out loud because he was like, he's a builder, so he was like, "Go, John!" He was like, you know what I mean? He was like, "They can't catch John." He was like, he's got long legs. He was like that, you know what I mean? And the whole audience was like dying laughing, and I was mortified. Sure. I was like, but of course, he had the perfect response for that movie because that was the kind of movie that
it was a propulsive. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
And then after the movie, Andy Warhol came up to me and he said, "Oh, I really like the movie." And my father's looking at him. He goes, "Who's this guy?" He goes, like this. He goes, "He looks just like an albino." He tells me like this, and I'm like, "This is Andy Warhol, Dad." You know what I mean? It's like, and Andy Warhol thought it was the funniest thing. And so now, in retrospect, I realize, man, he was really, he was like unconscious.
Yeah.
In his way, but he really enjoyed. He didn't get to live that long to see me do a lot of things, but he was excited.
Got to meet Andy Warhol.
Yeah,
so
he got
some-
yeah.
I mean, when I think back to the first stuff I saw you, and you mentioned Friedkin, I mean, you were working with some really cool directors early on, and then
yeah.
And I think the first time I remember seeing you on screen, and I want to show a clip, and maybe this isn't usually...
Five Corners?
Not Five Corners, which is a great performance. This is even before that. This is The Color of Money.
Oh, yeah.
And I
little
love this
part.
movie. This is like, I know this is not the first one they talk about for Scorsese, but it's one of my favorite Scorsese movies.
As a handsome man, Paul Newman. Wow. I mean, come on. I mean, no matter how you looked at Paul Newman, up his nose, back, behind his ears, he's so handsome. Oh my God. I mean, you're just like, we rehearsed the whole movie with a video camera because Paul Newman had done that with Sidney Lumet for The Verdict.
Right. I want to hear you from the microphone so everybody can hear.
So we rehearsed the entire movie, and I played a lot of the other roles too. And, it was just, and Scorsese was nervous around Paul Newman also.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was really nervous. And matter of fact, the first day, he would tell these jokes, and sometimes they would be very long jokes. And Marty would look at me like he didn't get the punchline, and either did I. So, he'd be like, "It's funny, right? It's funny." He was like, "Funny, right?" And then, the first day of shooting, I think it was that scene, I had to put my coat on or something. I was nervous. I was working with Paul Newman. I mean, Tom Cruise was still, pretty young at the time. So, and Marty said, he was trying to shoot, like only do 2-3 takes. And he goes, "That was very good, excellent." And he was very nervous. That's how we talked, And he said, but he kept tucking his shirt in, He was like, because he was nervous, And he said, "The next take, just do me a favor." He goes, "Just put your jacket on." I just died laughing. I said, I'm a little nervous. I'll just put my jacket on. I said, maybe it was a little too much movement or something. And I said, "Listen, Marty, I'm a little nervous because every time I turn, I look at Paul Newman and I see like somebody up there likes me, The Hustler, HUD." And Marty goes, "You think you're nervous?" He goes, "I got to direct him." He goes, Says, you don't understand, because I see every movie goes right across my head. It goes like that. It goes, the Silver Chalice. He goes like that. I was dying laughing. And so then we got, and Paul Newman was great. I became like friendly with him, afterwards. I did some charity things with him, and he was such a lovely guy. And he was telling me one day, he said it took him like 25 years to learn to really relax on screen. He said, I was always working too hard. And he just was really an interesting guy, it was like it was a thrill, to work. Then I worked with Robert Redford after that, and it was a big experience for me. And he was very, very kind, very kind.
Amazing. He won the Oscar for that one, as I recall. Great film. So you mentioned Spike before, and that obviously, so he saw Five Corners.
He saw Five Corners. That's the reason he wanted me in, because I threw my mother out the window. So
that gets you the racist to do the right thing.
John Patrick Shanley wrote it. I just did it. You know what I mean? So
it wasn't an improv.
It was. I didn't make it up. You know what I mean? So,
and what did you guys? You talk about kind of having kind of reverse, upbringing. But what did you connect with as just contemporaries?
We had so many references. Whether it was the Knicks, growing up in New York. And it took a while, to get, when he asked me, do you want to be in the movie? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, who do you want to play? And I said, I think I would like to play the racist character, because I think that's what the big part of the movie is about, And so, and I kind of understood that. And then I worked in a pizzeria for a while, before I did it. And then we really got him, and I was got close with Ernest Dickerson, who was the cinematographer, and Wynn Thomas. A lot of those pictures in the Wall of Fame, those are my pictures, a lot of those pictures, And so Ruth Carter, and so those are people who've been friends of mine, since '88. And, it was a great cast, Giancarlo, and it was just,
Yellow,
but,
what do you remember about
but
that
then I
time?
remember that in rehearsal we started adding things, and then the more relaxed I got, I started sharing things that maybe he didn't know or he hadn't heard, and then I would tell him, and he would say, "Oh, we got to put that in there." Things that were really incendiary at the time. So the one thing about it was we would go to dailies at LIU, Long Island University, and the whole crew and all the people from craft service, they would be invited. So we would watch the same scene 4 times. So of course, people are watching you do something and they're seeing it 4 times or maybe 5 times. And so then some people who hadn't the experience of, working on a movie started to think, well, that's who you are. You know what I mean? And there was a woman in craft service, and it was very, very hot. It was a real bad heat wave that summer, and she would pass me by when she had water. And I said, can I, and finally one day she turned and she said to me, I hate you. She said, I hate you so much, And I was like, so I told Spike, I said, Spike, she thinks I'm Pino, And he was dying laughing, He thought it was the funniest thing. But I was a little worried at first. I thought, well, suppose I take the subway, people, and it predicted that Joe Klein being one of the people, that there was going to be riots and all this stuff. But I've never, ever had an adverse relationship from that movie.
Well,
ever.
It stands the test of time. It's
so
a classic.
But it was an exciting movie to make and upsetting at the end. But we had a great group of people.
For my money, the Coen brothers are maybe my favorite filmmakers of all time, and you've appeared in a number of their films. Miller's Crossing, they write, I believe, Barton Fink with you in mind.
I wrote Miller's Crossing too, yeah.
Amazing. Barton Fink, I feel like every frustrated writer's favorite film of all time. It's one of those. You obviously vibed with them. You knew, I think, Frances from Yale, Frances McDormand. Do they direct you much in the course of your films? Like, what's the vibe on set from Joel and Ethan?
They've seen me do a lot of different performances on stage, and sometimes they write things for me that they haven't seen me do. So, and we share a kind of dark sense of humor, and I think the more human you can make their characters, the more like horribly, funny it is, and can be moving too. But we just really get along, and I've directed one of Ethan's plays on Broadway, and so it's just, like kind of you develop a shorthand and a language, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to try things with them and to make myself look, not, good, or heroic or whatever. I've really kind of just been really uninhibited for them. I mean, in a deep way, where other directors say, hey, could you do something like that? And it's like, no, you have to kind of earn that.
Yeah, no, Sam Jackson's been here. I remember he always talks about, like, if you don't trust them, they're going to screw you in the edit. And if you feel like that's going to happen,
you're always going to be protecting yourself.
Yeah.
But, these are characters that you're just going to go, you're going to go out there. I mean, I think I've learned from doing things on stage that I like to do that. I like to take a risk and see where it lands.
You said, look, we talked about LEBOWSKI, that Jesus, you thought, you were out there, to say the least, in that one.
Well, I had done a play that they had seen, and that was sort of an inspiration for them. And I had done a play I did these 2 plays in this trilogy by Ronaldo Pravad called La Puta Vida. And I played, it was a mother and son, and then a guy like the Jesus, his name was Chino, and this little boy. It was about their relationship.
Got it.
Yeah.
But is it fair to say that after you did that performance and you saw it back, you said, I went too far, or this is...
No, I was like shocked. You know what I mean? When I saw it. Because I was trying all these different things for them, because they kept telling me about the role, but then I saw it was so small. They said, well, we know you're going to come up with a lot of things for it, and I did. And I didn't think they were going to put all of that in. And then the way they edited it, it was just, whatever. And the movie it's a really, really funny movie.
It holds up, and most comedies do not.
That's like a philosophical comedy.
And like the fusion of like Jeff as a man, as a human being, and Jeff as a performer. It was
I mean, that is just, you talk about performances and all these people who've won awards, I mean, Jeff didn't win the teeniest award for the dude, but the dude is in our psyche.
Yeah.
And it's a great, great performance. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of other great, but Jeff, I'm a big fan of Jeff's.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine you know this, but you played a relative of mine once, John. Can you guess?
Herb Stemple?
Herb Stemple.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Herb Stemple, a cousin removed, basically from me. Of course, one of the leads in Quiz Show. I love Quiz Show so much.
Right,
Directed by Robert Redford.
Another good-looking guy. I mean, come on.
Yes.
And then he was a good director, and my God, he used to, smelled good. Oh my God.
You can smell it off the screen.
I would do anything for him. No,
but that is such a beautifully made film, meticulous in every way.
Yeah. I love doing it.
What did you make of Herb as a character?
Well, I was the only person cast for a long time.
Yeah.
When I saw the kinescopes, I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anybody like Herb in a way. And then I think originally he wanted Paul Newman and Tim Robbins to play the Van Dorens. And Tim was doing Shawshank Redemption, and Paul Newman was on the fence about it, and then we were waiting, and Redford told me, it would be great if you could gain some weight, and I started gaining weight. And then he said, well, you could play the other part, you could play the
Rob Morrow's.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I'm going in, I'm all in for Herb, and I gained a lot of weight and had my teeth and my hair thinned and discolored, and but I loved working with Robert. He was very, very helpful, and that was I mean, he has a very high voice,
right.
Herb. I can't, because I didn't warm it up now, but he spoke like this, and Josh was a distant relative of mine, but I mean, I would warm up, and the whole crew would imitate me, like me, and I would do these things because it was all in the nose, and and I would talk to him, at length, and as I was getting heavier and heavier, and he was very innocent guy. And if you watch the Kinescopes, I mean, they made it more of the tragedy of the wasp.
Right.
But Van Doren took to it like a fish in water. And Herb was always awkward about it. So they definitely, and there were different versions of it where Herb was a little bit more aware of that. But I loved, it was a great group. Chris McDonald, too, was great, And of course, Rafe was, that was a big find when Redford showed me.
He was coming right off of Schindler's List.
He showed me the tape of him in the Schindler's List haircut.
Yeah.
And he said, what do you think of this guy? And we'd have a lot of time alone, me and Mr. Redford. So he's a very interesting man because he didn't get to do all these eccentric characters, but he could play almost all the characters in the movie, when we'd be alone. So.
One of the many things that I love about your career is, like, yes, you can work for the Redfords and the Coen brothers and the Spike Lees, and yet there's also a segment of your fan base probably that knows you from, like, Adam Sandler films, right? Like, do you see, like, any difference?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
So
I not with Adam so much, but with some like maybe Transformers films.
Right.
I consider that if I was a builder, that's my electrical job.
Sure.
Right? And then my other jobs, that's my plumbing work.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like this, like quiz show is my plumbing work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to have a toolbox. But when you do these things, it's like less of an intricate portrait that you're painting. It's more of a sketch, and within that, you can do a lot of things. And it's really hard, to do that. But with Adam, I've had fun doing like the Zohan or Mr. Deeds.
I mean, you get to work with Nicholson in anger management. That's something.
Yeah, well, he had told Nicholson that I was going to do the film.
Oh, so you were bait.
So he was a big
You
fan of my first movie, Mac. And he was like, oh, Johnny's going to be in it. Great. And then Sandler called me up. He said, Nicholson, he's excited you're going to be in the movie. He wants to do the movie. And I was like, oh, so you blackmailed me. So then, when I met him, he was really funny and he was really nice to me. And I was a huge fan of his and stuff. And I did ask him when we were doing the movie, so how's it going, Mr. Nicholson? You want to call me Jack, man? Call me Jack. And I said, how's it, what's it like? He goes, well, I said, what's sort of the tone of the movie? He goes, well, let me tell you, Johnny, there is no tone. He goes, I've been all over the map, man. I've been, in the Strindberg play. I've been in a Pirandello play. And he was, he had all these metaphors and stuff. But, I told Stanley, I said, there's no tone, he said, so I just, but he was great just to be around. And he was so giving off camera. He's like a real.
I've always heard that.
Really giving off camera.
A Few Good Men, the famous story is that he did he did the reverses even when he did anything.
Oh, yeah. He was really great. And, he loved my first movie. He had told me he saw it 3 times. And I was really, these are people that have had major, effect on you. And when you meet them, it's, you have to digest that because they're part of why you do what you do.
Have you reconciled that you have now shifted into that for younger actors that you work with on a set? Probably?
I don't know. I can't. That doesn't really help me.
I'm sure,
I don't want to be like, well, I know what I'm doing now.
I'm sure Riz Ahmed looks at you on set and says, oh,
I helped Riz
guy.
because Riz was under a lot of pressure, and he would vent and do it. I said, well, you just have to speak up for yourself. You can do it in a reasonable way. If you don't like something, if you feel like you're being pushed around or whatever. And Riz would sometimes vent, and I kind of, showed him a little bit of how I learned to navigate things. Because I worked with some directors who were really abusive, physically abusive. And, so then I learned, I said, well, I have to speak up for myself. Otherwise, it doesn't really help your performance if you're tense and everything. And that was kind of a school of directing for some
It
people.
was a type of director too. I think you
Some-
mentioned
some-
before
some
the
people.
Ciminos and the Friedkins
Yeah,
were
I mean,
aggressive men at the time
yeah.
that were not. That's
I worked with like Francesco Rosi, and he wasn't that way. He was a masterful director. But he would show you all these things to do physically and stuff, and I loved working with Francesco.
Where does in the Venn diagram, like doing something like for Matt Reeves in the Batman, is that?
Well, that was, I put a lot of work into it. I was reading all the comics and, the comics that had inspired that
Yeah.
and stuff. And I took it seriously, and I also went to the source material,
Right.
too. And I told him, I said, I'll do it if I can wear these glasses.
That was the
Because I said, everyone else has a mask, and I want a mask, too. And I don't have, like, really cold eyes. So I know that.
Yeah.
And so, when you have that shield, that helps you. Sometimes one thing,
Yeah.
or it can be something physically or a costume piece, and it can free you, in a way. But I take it seriously. You know what I mean?
It's tough to. You passed on the Penguin. Was that just sort of?
No, I had done it already.
You did it.
I felt like I'd done it already, and I liked what I did. I felt really good doing Batman. I don't know if I wanted to be in, to continue and be in another series and things like that. I like to come in and, and then do my thing and
Yeah.
and then leave. And just then I go.
Is there a director that's eluded you? Who's on the list? Where's the?
Oh, there's a lot of.
Where's the Coppola? Where's the? I don't know.
Coppola I never, worked with. There's people, Tarantino, sometimes I've turned things down, and then if you turn something down, sometimes then the person thinks you don't, want to work with them. And sometimes it's a family decision.
Right.
And sometimes, or someone's sick or something, and.
Is there one you regret that you can say?
Yeah. There's a few people I didn't turn down Stanley Kubrick, but Stanley Kubrick called me up for Eyes Wide Shut, and I was like shocked that he knew all about me. He asked me about all these actors, and I was like, he goes, I had just finished La Tregua, The Truce, and I spent 5 years preparing for that, while I was doing other things. He knew all about Primo Levi. We talked about Primo Levi, and he said, I think, you're a terrific actor. And I said, well, thank you. He goes, well, you are. And I was like, well, I can't walk around my house saying that to my wife. She'll hit me over the head, with a frying pan. And he said, well, I'm going to send you a script, and I think, and I hope you like it. He goes, you'll like it. And then what do we do? I said, well, he said, but I heard you may do a movie next year as a director. I said, I don't have the money. And so I didn't say to him, he said, I wrote this part for you. I didn't say to him, whatever it is, I will do. But I was so excited. I said, I'll read it and then we'll work it out. I was talking to him like a normal person.
Sure.
And he said, well, how can I get you the script? I said, well, FedEx it. He goes, what if you're not home? I said, well, I know my FedEx man. His name is Ray, and he throws it over the gate. Right. And he said, well, that's unbelievable. He said, yeah. I said, well, do you know your FedEx man, So I was just trying to be a normal person. And anyway, he told me, he wrote the role for me. He wanted me to do it. And what do I think of Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman? And I was like all excited. The next day, I heard that I wasn't available. I was unavailable because I didn't tell him, no matter what.
He's used to getting that immediate.
That's
no
it.
matter
And
what.
I didn't know that at the time, and I just tried to be a regular. So I would have liked to have worked with him just because I'm a big fan of his and see how I would have survived doing
A
100
year-long
takes.
shoot, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That would have been a
I
year
would
of
have
your
been
life.
replaced or whatever.
Yeah, Harvey
But-
Keitel lost
Yeah,
his.
lots of people lost it. There were a lot of people who were replaced.
Which role would it have been?
I was the piano player, but there was a scene at the end
Odd
that
Field ended up
they,
playing,
they didn't have, and I guess he was in 3 different parts of the movie, and
Yeah.
they think they cut that. But anyway, so I would have liked to just had an encounter with Stanley.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's something that, you know.
You've got plenty of great experiences, but you got a Stanley Kubrick conversation. That's more
Oh
than most
yeah,
can
that's
say. And he
long,
wrote it for
2
you.
hours, and we talked about Primo Levi at length.
Amazing.
Yeah.
A couple audience questions. What books are you currently reading? One of our audience members would like to know.
What books am I reading? Well, I've decided to read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which I've never read because I've read some of his other books, but I'm reading that book, and I read, you know, I read all different kinds of authors. I'm a book person.
I've also discovered he's the biggest WNBA fan,
Yes.
new WNBA fan.
Well, I'm a
right?
basketball fan, and I've always followed a women's college,
Right.
but now I have Liberty tickets, and I love it. I love it. It's fascinating to watch, and it reminds me of basketball before it was played above the rim.
Right.
And I love the teamwork and the passing that goes on at the game. I think it's a really, really good basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Would you rather have a New York Liberty championship or an Oscar?
Well, they already won the championship.
Okay.
So no. But if it would be like the Knicks championship, that'd be a tough one.
That's a
You
tough
know what I mean?
decision.
That's a tough one.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's a communal
Yes.
victory for everyone.
The fact that you're even considering that as the option means you're thinking of your fellow Knicks fans.
Well,
it's a beautiful thing.
it's a great thing, the collective. Yeah. I think the individual thing, it's terrific in some ways, but it really takes teamwork to do something that's really good. In sports or in a movie or in a play, there's a lot of components to it. And I don't think it's right when people say, well, this is the best. You weren't doing it by yourself. Someone sat before a blank page and wrote it, and there's a designer, and there's a lot of choices that goes into that. And I love when I see beautiful teamwork, or if I watch, something and everyone is excellent in it. Like you don't know where to look, and there's something great about that.
I mean, yeah, you're only as good as your collaborator, your
That's
co-star.
right. That's right. That's why I wanted to work with Christopher Walken.
I was going to say.
I thought, listen,
yeah.
Ben said, you're going to have a love affair with someone, and I was like, Chris. I love Chris, and I love working with him, and I've directed him, and I've watched him on stage. I saw him play Elvis Presley in a play that he wrote based on National Enquirer articles, where he's dressed as a woman, Elvis, and as a waitress, and and he never really died. But we have a lot of fun, and he's someone I admired when I was younger, and I still think he's a wonderful actor. And we just laugh, and I thought, well, if there's someone you have that simpatico with, it's easy to be in love with them, right? Because if you don't laugh with someone, then it's maybe okay, you're attracted to someone or whatever. And he's also very he has a fragility to him, and I just thought I don't have to act. I don't really. I can just be with him, and he's like a jazz musician because he spins it, and so you have to be really on your toes
in the moment always.
Yeah, and he doesn't like he didn't want to really kiss and stuff like that. And I was making fun of him one day. I said, Chris, I said, the only reason I wanted to do this show, I said, was to kiss you. So he was like, not doing it, It's a cliche, man. He was like, But, it is interesting that when we see these scenes and stuff like that, it's always the things that lead up to something that is kind of evocative or sensual or even, But when we see people actually do it, we're like, yeah, well, they're not really doing it. You know what I mean? They're kind of doing it, but not really. But it's the things that it's the anticipation, and so I've loved working with Chris. I mean, I have a very warm spot.
Is he as much of a Luddite as I hear? Does he have like a phone?
He doesn't have a phone. I've shown him my phone. He's amazed by it. He's like, oh my God, he says, this is great, and it's just. And he's very humble actor. He's talks about all these performances, which I've seen him do, you know, that this was good, this wasn't good. I'm not, you know, great at Shakespeare. And he just has a sense of play. And a lot of actors, they take themselves so seriously, they forget, like little kids when they play, they're great. You know, you watch them play, I mean, they believe it. You know, they're in it. And so Chris has the experience, but he also has that playfulness of a child.
Well, it makes you great, but also let's factor in, don't you want to enjoy this? Don't you want to have fun until the end? Like, like the day it stops being fun, why are you doing this?
Right. You know, it's a tricky balance because people's egos and all kinds of things, and I want to be good. It was a great director. I did many plays with him, The Cherry Orchard and Endgame, Master Builder, Andre Belgrader, and he used to always tell us, you know, don't try to be good. Just do it. Do your thing. You know, but don't put that on you.
Focus on don't focus on the result.
That's right. Focus on what you're doing. You know what I mean? And it's very wise words.
We're going to end with the happy, sad, confused, profoundly random questions for you, John.
Okay, fine.
Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dog or a cat person? Well, I had a cat in the night of, and Bam Bam, and everyone loved Bam Bam. But I'm allergic to cats, so
dogs by default.
So yeah, but cats are more independent.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah.
Do you collect anything?
Yes.
Let me rephrase
Sadly,
that. What do you collect?
Sadly, like everything, you know. No, I have a huge vintage movie poster collection. I need more walls. Dennis Hopper had these sliding walls that Frank Gehry made in his house. And he would have all these great paintings you could slide in and out. I need that. I have that.
What's the most prized movie poster you have? What's your crown?
Oh, there's a lot of great ones I have. I mean, I have like Charles Laughton Polish poster of Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I consider he's one of the greatest actors of all time. And that's a great performance. So yes, and you know, when I first started doing, you know, movies and things, I would keep, you know, all those cinema magazines, American Film, because I was like, wow, I'm in the magazine, and now I have all these magazines. What am I going to do with them? You know what I mean? What am I going to do with these magazines? It's so, I guess when you don't have a lot growing up, it's hard to throw things away, and you know, so I'm putting things. I want to like give my archive away to like my undergrad school if they want it. So it's, but I don't throw things away easily.
No, I get it. What's the wallpaper on your phone?
The wallpaper?
The background on your phone?
Oh, my God. Well, actually, my son and I, we bought Speedos when we were in Sicily. So there's a picture of us in Speedos.
Sure.
My younger son. And so he's very proud of that. And so, you know, that's what it is. Yeah, Channing Tatum saw it, and he like flipped out. He goes like, "Magic Mike." He goes, you know. I was like, listen, I was stripping way before you, man. You know. No, that's a whole other thing. I mean, like, you know, my mom used to, you know, do a kind of faux striptease like for my dad. You know, when he was depressed, she would do it. And I actually have family films. I mean, she would have leotards on. You know what I mean? But she would have like, you know, like leopard panties and bra over the leotards. And we would be dancing with her three boys, you know, trying to entertain my father because he'd be like in a depression or something, you know what I mean? And I have this on 8mm film. I saw it and I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life, you know? And my mother would do all kinds of things to make my father smile. She did. And as a matter of fact, in Romance and Cigarettes, I use a thing where when my father, he had cancer and stuff like that, I was over the house visiting and he wasn't doing that well. And my mother like ran into the living room with a big kitchen knife, like, ah, screaming. And my father threw his hands up like, oh my God, you know? And I was like, and then he just smiled and she walked out. And I was like, what? what was that? And so my father said, oh, I asked your mother to do that every once in a while, just so, he goes, just so I know I'm alive. And I realized this is one of the greatest like love scenes I ever seen in my life. And I put it in the movie. It's still not as good as when my mother and father did it, but I was like, oh my God, like she's doing this just so we can have like a jolt. And so when you see stuff like that, that's someone doing it for someone else. And I learned a lot about acting between my parents because they went moment to moment. Nothing passed with them. Like my father would, my mother would give my father a look. He said, well, what's that look? He would say, I know what you're thinking. She would say, yeah, you know what and I know what's on your mind. They would go back and forth. And when I first brought my wife, which we were just my girlfriend Kathy over, she couldn't take it. She started crying at the table. And my mother said, well, you'll get used to it or you'll leave. She said, that's it. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. But it was like, that was like better than any acting class. And when I went to acting class, I was like, I see my mother and father do this all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? And boring, they would watch movies together and my father would be laughing, my mother would be crying. And I usually was with my mother, like I would get emotional. He was like, why is he crying? This is a good movie. You know what I mean? Oh my
God, I love it.
I mean, Betty Davis was a big, my mother loved Betty Davis. And Jenna Rollins.
Sure.
My mother loved Jenna Rollins. My mother, when Gloria, when she's on a train with the gun and she says, you let a woman beat you. And my mother she just loved Jenna Rollins so much. And once we went to see opening night at the New York Film Festival, and it was with my brother and my wife, and there's funny things, but in Cassavetes films, they're not cued. You don't know what to laugh at.
There's no laugh
So it's
line.
about your sensibility or my sensibility or someone else's, and we were laughing because there's a play within a play, and we thought it was hilarious. And this woman who was like, it was like the centerpiece or something. She had a big fur coat on, and she had some work done. Well, she kept turning to my mother. We were laughing and laughing, like as if we shouldn't be laughing. So my mother goes to me like, why does she keep turning around? I said, she doesn't get it, Ma. So then she turns around, and my mother goes, you turn around one more time. She goes, and I'm gonna punch you right in the face, like that. And I was like, it was like right out of the movie, you know what I mean? And I was mortified, but I was like, you know what? I said, she says, we get it, because you don't, you know what I mean?
Right.
Watch the movie, you know what I mean? And I told that to Jenna Rollins once, because I had lunch with her, and she just said, that was a typical reaction to some of our films, because people didn't know. And she just said, I would wish I got to meet your mother. I said, Mom, my mother just loves you so much.
I mean, if we've learned nothing else tonight, it's bring your parents to movies. I mean, your dad back in the day.
Oh my God.
At your film, the Friedkin film. Your mom at Cassavetes.
Yeah, I mean, they were in it. They were in the movie. They didn't it wasn't like
No distance.
Dispassionate. No. Like just, my father would, put in one Mac, he'd be dead asleep because he got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and there'd be a movie on. And then in a climactic moment, he'd wake up and interact with the movie, right? And then go back to sleep. And I saw it many times, especially with Burt Lancaster, you know what I mean? And he would be, you can't fuck with Burt, you know what I mean? It was like, yeah. And then he'd go back to sleep, you know what I mean? And I was just like, this is, all my friends, my friends growing up, they would like to hang out with my father.
I can imagine why.
Because he was just completely unconscious. And I think that's
no filter,
Well, people have asked me, they said, well, what you don't seem to be inhibited. I said, no, I'm not inhibited.
There it is.
No, because I feel like I don't really care. Like, I saw my parents do that, and it's like, and if you have enough affirmation in your life, you're willing to try. It may not work or whatever, but you have to get past embarrassment sometimes. And sometimes it's quite embarrassing.
Okay, I know we're over time, but indulge me in the last couple of things. Last actor you were mistaken for. Does it ever happen?
Nicolas Cage many times. There's someone else I get sometimes. I don't. A lot of times people say they look just like me, and they don't look like me.
Only one, John Turturro.
And then they say, guys say I look just like you, and I'm like, no, you don't.
What's the worst note a director has ever given you?
Tense up, do it like you did it in another movie. Then I feel like telling them, you know what, why don't you get another job? You know what I mean? It's just like, you can't ask me to do something I did before. That's like cheating on somebody. You know what I mean? It's like, no, come up with your own idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. Or someone, like a director telling me, you have to trust me on the first day. It's like, I told this one director, I said, well, I don't know you.
Yeah. You gotta earn
If I don't
it.
know you,
Yeah.
how can I trust you?
Yeah.
I said, I'm also half Sicilian, so I don't trust easily, okay?
In the spirit,
And I don't forget easily.
and in the spirit of happy, sad, confused, an actor who always makes you happy. You see them on screen, you're happier immediately.
Oh, well, there's so many of them.
One that comes to mind.
Yeah, God, that makes me happy all the time. Well, I said Jenna Rollins makes me happy. Barbara Stanwyck, you know what I mean? Burt Lancaster, Edward G. Robinson.
Okay.
Love Edward G. Robinson. Love James Cagney.
A movie that always makes you sad, breaks you down.
Oh man, there's a lot of those. I mean, I love On the Waterfront.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. I don't know. There's so many Charles Lawton and in a lot of different things. I think Edward G. Robinson is really, really, really powerful actor.
Those are great.
There's so many.
Yeah.
So many. It's hard for me to pick. I love Robert Mitchum.
Yep.
So.
And finally, a food that makes you confused, John. A food that makes you confused. You see it on a menu. Why do people eat that? I don't understand.
Well, I don't like coffees that have all different kinds of things in them.
Oh, just keep it pure.
I don't accept that. I
Like you're not a frappuccino.
No,
guy.
No. That does not work. No, that's a malted. You know what I mean? It's like, you want a malted?
I love a malted, though. Let's just...
Malted is good, but it's a malted.
It is a malted.
Okay, you can't say, it's a cinnamon raisin, this, that, whatever. I hear them describe it. I'm like, this is disgusting. I mean, because a great espresso, like if you get it in Naples in Italy, I mean, it has the crema. And maybe they rim it with sugar, and it's like bitter chocolate, if you want it with sugar or not. But that's an art form, and it takes the coffee and it takes a certain kind of water too. So I like it potente. Yeah.
We like your acting potente, too. You do it well, sir. Congratulations on the new season of Severance. I'm sure you guys have checked it out, but check it out again. Spread the good word on Apple TV+.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for going down.
Oh, this is always a great place. Love to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pushed to do this by Josh.